What's up, everybody? Welcome back into the dorm room. Ryan is back in Olean, but we are bringing you all of our observations from yesterday's practice, today's practice. Thank you so much, Ryan, for filling in yesterday. I had a little bit of a baseball swan song where baseball season's over. We're fully now on to football. I was out of practice today. Ton to get into. How are you, my friend?
I am doing great, Matt, and it was, fun being out there yesterday. No problem covering, and excited to talk about today's practice as well.
So I think the best place to start is probably in the headline where I started was which wide receiver is setting Buffalo Bills training camp ablaze. And the reason I put that is because Tyrell Shavers is truly shaking up the wide receiver competition over the past 48 hours. And, this isn't something that's catching anybody by surprise. If you go back to, early in the offseason, I mean, when Brandon Beane started doing interviews after the season ended, and he was asked about guys that are kind of coming up, and everybody thought it made the most sense to go to Justin Shorter, a guy that they spent a 5th round draft pick on. But Brandon Beane chose to put over Tyrell Shavers. And, you hear from Sean McDermott today, asked about him and what stands out about him. And he said he's been very impressed with him. First one in, last one out, very consistent every single day. And I think those habits are starting to produce results. In rookie minicamp, Ryan, wasn't it interesting that we get there and it's Tyrell Shavers who the Bills tabbed to be kind of like that second-year veteran to show the rookies the ropes? I mean, you had Justin Shorter. You chose to go with Tyrell Shavers. It was just another building block on this case for a burgeoning kind of name in that wide receiver room. And over the last 48 hours, you're going to talk about what he did yesterday. And he's been a big part of first-team reps. And with Chase Claypool missing today, he continued it. What happened yesterday?
Yeah, yesterday is when he first started seeing first team reps, Matt, and he made the most of those reps. He was targeted once working with the first team, caught an in-breaking pass from Josh Allen, and looked the part out there, knew exactly where he was supposed to be, ran each route correctly, was doing what he was supposed to do, blocking on plays if it was a run play. I came away very impressed, and in the back of my mind, I thought, okay, is this kind of what they're doing at safety and what they've done before where they're giving guys an audition? But now, like you said, 24 hours after that practice, he's still working with the first team. This is not just let's just put him out there in the mix and rotate that next guy in. He's playing well, and he's earned that. And, it goes back to Brandon Beane's comments after the Stephon Diggs trade, who can step up, who can contribute. And it raised some eyebrows at the time where he mentioned Tyrell Shavers, but now it makes sense. This guy never left Buffalo after the season ended. He was there all off season, training, working, getting stronger, probably working on the route running, everything. And now they see this guy knows the playbook. He knows exactly what he's supposed to be doing. We can throw him out there and see how much he's grown as a player. But also we have the confidence in him where if one of our guys needs a breather, if one of our guys goes out at any time this season, he could come in. And now all of a sudden, he's really given himself a chance, Matt, to make this 53-man roster.
I got to bring out my notebook for the big play from today, but quick shout out to my squad that we did an end of the season party last year, the baseball team, and they got me. Look at this. Got the emblem for our team, got my initials down here, and now the notebook. Couple of notebooks in here. It fits. Fresh. Shout out to the CA9U squad, man. Great season. Thank you for this awesome gift. So Shavers, it's an interesting conversation too, because it's a guy that I still have some hesitations about, because there are moments where I would say the hands aren't as consistent as he is in the workroom and in the training room and all those kinds of things. Sometimes the hands I feel like have betrayed him in these moments. And today was a perfect juxtaposition between a drop during one-on-ones, which I thought was in his hands and he should have made the play. He was working against Jamarcus Ingram, and it was a really physical interaction. By the way, we're going to get into one-on-ones later. Jamarcus Ingram was an absolute stud when it came to putting a physicality on wide receivers, specifically Keon Coleman. We'll talk about that in a little while. But I thought that this was maybe a holding penalty on him, but still a play that he could have made. He didn't make it, but he comes back later in practice, getting a first team rep. And I think it was actually back against Ingram, which I think is fitting that he ends up beating him. Gets down the field, shows Josh Allen an open target, goes out, extends his hands, makes a catch. Ryan, the thing with Shavers is it's length, it's speed, it's quickness, it's route running. The only piece of the puzzle that I feel like the Bills are still trying to fit in and make it work perfectly is the consistency with the hands. The more catches he makes like this one, sprawling out, fingertips kind of grab, the more confidence you start to build in the guy.
100%. And he's also getting some opportunities due to some injuries, due to some players not stepping up. Chase Claypool dealing with something minor day to day. We can talk more about the injury report here in a little bit. And then you have Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Matt, who really hasn't done much at camp. When they signed him, I said, well, he can probably, go down, stretch the field, open up things underneath. But you want to see this guy make plays this summer a little bit too. And it's been very hit and miss. So now that window of opportunity is there for Shavers, and he's at least making the most of it in the short term, in these last 48 hours. He needs to keep doing this. He needs to create separation for himself from that next group of receivers, the KJ Hamlers, the Justin Shorters, and then try to surpass the Chase Claypools, the MVSs of this roster. And if he can do that, then all of a sudden, when we're talking roster cutdown day, it'll be interesting to see where he ends up on this depth chart. I think the first four are in place. We've already talked about those first four a lot, with Mac Hollins being that number 4 receiver, but he could be as high as wide receiver 5. But I'm also with you where this is not something where he's guaranteed a roster spot. He could also be practice squad priority for this team if he doesn't continue to do this consistently.
Aloha from one of our YouTube subscribers, Chris Spencer. I want to make sure I give you the shout out, my friend. Thank you for watching. We really appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well. Last thing on the wide receivers in terms of now setting up the competition for the rest of the summer and into the preseason. I think the top 4 guys have established themselves, right? You have Mac Hollins, who at moments feels like wide receiver 1, as probably crazy as that sounds like, with the way that he's been playing. Again, it's practice. You don't want to overreact to it. We'll see what this looks like when he's playing a full bevy of special team snaps and coming in on offense. You got Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir. I think those have been in training camp, the top 3. Then you kind of have MVS in this weird in between where it hasn't been overly impressive. He's made a couple nice plays here and there. He's run a lot on the second team. He's in kind of this weird area. Now you also have Keon Coleman, who I feel like is in that second tier underneath the top 3. And some days he's in that top tier. Some days, he made a catch today, Ryan, where he reminds you almost every practice, and our good buddy Pops Mafia mentions it here today, that he makes a play or two every practice where you kind of go, wow, this is going to be a really special addition to this offense. Then after that, to me, it's like that trio of guys, whether it's Shorter, Hamler, or I wouldn't even I put Shorter on the outside looking in, Shavers, Claypool, and Hamler for maybe that 6th spot. They can go with 7 potentially. Maybe Shorter gets into the mix. I'll give you another reason today why maybe it's going to be hard for him to get into the mix. Those 3 guys are battling out for that final spot. This is going to be really interesting. And listen, if it's a very dry summer for MVS, I'm not ruling out a circumstance where they keep 6 and he's not one of them, as unlikely as I think that is, because he has so much proven ability in the league. It just comes down to how much does he have left ahead of him and how much are you relying on what he's been in the past?
Yeah, and I've said the same thing when we've talked about wide receiver 6 and Chase Claypool. I think having a track record will help him make this roster, that being MVS in this case. But Josh Allen hit it off with them. They brought him in. He needs to contribute. He's had a down year last year in KC. He performed well come playoff time, but the regular season was pretty up and down, more so down than up. And if he's not going to be a regular contributor for this team, they should be thinking about wide receiver 5 and wide receiver 6. What else can they do for us? If MVS can't contribute at receiver, maybe you do bring in a young guy like Shavers, but then you also keep a handler who can do kick return, punt return. You have to weigh all of these things when you're trimming this roster down. So as much as he and Josh Allen hit it off, as much as, you've seen they have a good relationship, he blinged out Josh Allen here recently at the start of camp. It's not a guarantee for him either. He needs to not just have these nice plays here and there. He needs to be more consistent, because right now, obviously, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, they've been making a lot of nice plays. Keon Coleman's been much more consistent in terms of making plays. And Mac Hollins has been heavily involved as well. He needs to get into that tier in terms of a few plays per practice where you sit there and say, okay, this guy's going to make this roster.
Next up, I want to go to Josh Allen. And the second part of the headline is Josh Allen having the greatest training camp of his Buffalo Bills career? I mean, really, I think through 5 days, I can't remember, outside of that one period with the 3 interceptions, him being more dialed in than he is right now. And, he made a couple plays today that I want to talk about. But, watching him yesterday before the pads came on and then the transition into today, can you make an argument for that?
Yeah, you can make an argument this is his best training camp ever. And again, go back to the 3 interception day, Matt. 1 was a clear penalty, 2 are miscommunication. So you can't even put them both of the interceptions on him necessarily either. I mean, it was something where young receivers, guys that don't know this system necessarily yet, are still learning it. In terms of Allen and the ball placement, it's been pretty much on the money. And anyone that's watched Josh Allen, he has the laser arm, he has the big arm. That's not what's impressing me this camp. He's still doing that. He's still showing off the arm. He's still making great plays. It's the way that he's showing good timing. It's the way that he's layering these passes in. Mm-hmm. That touchdown pass to Dawson Knox yesterday, Matt, layered it over the linebacker in front of the safety, found that perfect spot for it. He's shown more touch this offseason. He's putting it in spots where only his guy can get it. The sideline touchdown yesterday to Keon Coleman. Some of the sideline routes that he's hit with his receivers on other drills, not necessarily touchdowns. It's not just throwing it into these tight windows using his arm strength. We're seeing a little bit more from him in terms of that arm talent, where he hasn't had to rely on layering passes in and using certain, the technique necessarily, because he has the big arm and he can rifle them in. But we're seeing more of that. We're seeing that evolution of Josh Allen's game, in my opinion.
It's interesting. Watching that touchdown from Dawson Knox yesterday, it really brought a visualization into my mind, the way that Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox complement each other as players. Because to me, Dawson Knox is such a physical tight end, right? He's willing to kind of roll his sleeves up, get a little bit nasty in his routes. In a way, he was kind of ping-ponging around a couple defenders. I mean, it was a physical route. Allen puts a beautiful ball back there. He goes up and makes a play. So you got to deal with the physicality that Knox brings. And not that Kincaid isn't physical. He's just so much more dynamic in terms of his quickness, his long speed, all the things that make him an elite receiver, potentially, that it's a different style that you have to deal with when he's on the field. And they have a good yin and yang going in the way that they put defenses in bind. When they go in 11 personnel and you can go from Kincaid to Knox, it is a nice kind of different pitch. It's not a changeup. Actually, it's almost like the fastball and the cutter for Mariano Rivera back in the day. It has the potential to be. If Dawson Knox can stay healthy, that cutter was so absolutely nasty. And to me, that was his pitch. That was his bread and butter. But that fastball, that 2-seam fastball that Rivera threw was really good as well. So I think Dawson Knox can be that. He had a huge day yesterday. Yeah. Dalton Kincaid made a couple plays today. It was more of a run-heavy first day of pads today. I felt like they really put a lot of emphasis on there, but there were some throws. And, as far as Josh Allen and the camp that he's having, the day that he had today, there were 2 plays specifically. The Bills just shared one of them. And it was Josh Allen, and I was on the far side of the end zone. So just picture this. You're looking down the field. Allen's back is to me. So I'm seeing the offense clearly, the line of scrimmage, all the moving pieces and parts. And it's a rare vantage point because I over the years, I haven't viewed it from this vantage point on a play like this. But Josh Allen ends up rolling out to his right, Ryan, and running full speed. And I'm talking about you're chugging in the 40, running as fast as you can. That's Josh Allen going across the field. Meanwhile, Keon Coleman is about 15 yards down the field, and he's running parallel to Josh Allen. And it is sticky coverage. And as a matter of fact, I got to check. Did you see the video yet?
I have not. No. I'll have to check that out.
It is a crazy completion. Watch it. I think they tweeted it, or they definitely put it on Instagram.
And they caught it and got it in?
Yes.
I did see that. Yes.
Okay. I can't remember who was in coverage. It might have been Ingram, but check the tape on that for me. It was such a sensational play. To make that throw on the run, running full speed, and then Coleman, who's also running full speed in that exact alignment, to be able to tip the pass up and secure the catch. I mean, that's a catch, not to blow up Gabe Davis's spot, but that's a catch over the last couple of years that maybe falls incomplete because of maybe a hands issue or a connection issue. Like, if they can build that kind of rapport, I feel like that has the potential to be really special. That was one of the big time plays that Josh Allen made today.
Rolling out Josh Allen is something I'm shocked the Bills didn't do more with Ken Dorsey, even with Brian Day. I think they did it with Gable. It didn't feel like they did it much with Dorsey. He's an absolute threat with his legs, Matt. We know this. You roll him out, you get some yardage in front of him, and it's like an option play. Either take the yardage in front of you, which with Josh Allen can be 5 yards to 50 yards, depending on what he does on a given play. But once he starts drawing up, a linebacker or coverage is going to have to come in on him, which is going to open up guys down the field as well. So it's not always going to be that sticky coverage that you're mentioning. Sometimes guys are going to have to come up to Allen, and that's going to open up someone down the field as well. I love the way that they're utilizing him. They're playing to the strengths of his skill set. I'm really encouraged thus far with what we're seeing from Joe Brady in this offense. For all players, not just Josh Allen, in terms of how he's getting the most out of these guys. It's just training camp. Preseason's another thing too. We'll have to see how this really looks in the regular season, but you can really see the imprint of what Joe Brady wants to do in terms of pre-snap, getting the best matchups available for his guys, making sure that Allen knows as much as possible, and putting these guys, the guys are positionless in terms of the receivers, and having great depth at running back. On paper, not only is Josh Allen arguably having his best camp of his career, this offense, in terms of the first 5 days, I can't remember a time where we've talked about camp where 4 of the first 5 days, the offense has been really, really sharp. You could argue all 5 days, minus that one late period, where the offense has just kind of come out firing and not looked back.
How much of that has you concerned about the defense? I mean, I guess I'll take it since you were just talking there and you can respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel like the defense necessarily. And first of all, today they were without big 3 major pieces. I mean, right. Matt Milano still working his way back. I thought it was interesting that Sean McDermott, when asked about it today, said he's not to where they want him to be, but it's a process. It's something that it's going to take a little bit more time. Taron Johnson wasn't on the field, so you saw a lot of Cam Lewis. You saw some Jamarcus Ingram in that spot, and then Von Miller, Matt Milano, and Taron Johnson. Without those 3 guys, that's potentially 3 starters. So I mean, it makes sense that's the case. I'm not worried about the defense because I'm seeing the guys that I think are going to be difference makers, potentially Greg Rousseau, Ed Oliver, Rasul Douglas, Christian Benford. Dude, Christian Benford made a play today. Like, he's such a scrappy dude. Like, he's such a competitor. Yep. End of a play. Frank Gore Jr., I don't know if it was a run or a short pass. He was down after 3 or 4 yards. How the running backs, they kind of keep running and they're running towards the goal line. And Christian Benford just kind of like follows him, kind of tapping on him, and then just comes in and just slaps the ball right out, and it goes flying a couple yards. And you could see the defensive coaches coming out to meet Benford to give him kind of like a shout out, like, hey man, that's the kind of effort, the kind of play that, sure, the play's over and maybe it's a little bit of a joke around thing, but he is just a guy that just is competing all the time. He's been very feisty in the one-on-ones. He's been very physical. We'll get into that in a little while. The safeties, I thought Taylor Rapp was solid today. Cole Bishop got the majority of the first team reps, with now Mike Edwards dealing with a hamstring injury, Ryan. We can maybe talk about that in a minute. He's going to be out for a couple weeks, according to Sean McDermott. I think the defense has been fine. I think it's just been more about the operations of the offense.
I agree completely with that. I mean, you've already talked about Greg Rousseau, but he's been a monster as of late. He had a sack yesterday. has been playing like his hair is on fire. We know Ed Oliver's had moments of dominance at camp. Daquan Jones has looked good and healthy once again. There have been guys stepping up on the line. At linebacker, Terrell Bernard is flying around just like last year. You hope Matt Milano progresses a little bit here as camp goes on. There's been some plays that are un-Milano-like, I would call it, in terms of coverage, not being able to necessarily keep up as well as he has in the past, but that's just shaking the rust off. So I'm not even worried about that. At cornerback, you already mentioned, the big three, the two outside and Taron Johnson. Kaiir Elam is having the camp of his life right now. Camp of his life. I know he's a young player, but every day it feels like he's getting an interception, Matt. He's making a play. He's playing with confidence. My biggest concern on this roster was the depth at cornerback on the outside. And slowly but surely, he's starting to make me feel a lot better about that. So, yeah, it comes down to the safety play. And the Bills are very confident in Taylor Rapp. That's why it's been Taylor Rapp starting every single day at one spot and a rotation at the other. Mike Edwards and his injury, that hurts his chances of winning the starting job first and foremost. This is a veteran that came over from Kansas City, was more of a backup role there, comes to Buffalo with a chance to get a start. But if you're out weeks, that's just giving a ton of reps to Hamlin and Cole Bishop. And the Bills could go that route. There's still some safety options available. Not that the Bills would necessarily go to the free agent market yet, but the safety spot is still something I'm monitoring in terms of who's going to win that job opposite Rapp. We know Bishop has the upside. He can do it all in terms of where you can put him. You can blitz with him. You can play him back. You can play him all over the field. It's just about the comfort, the communication, which I did note yesterday. The way that he was communicating with his teammates was a clear improvement from what I saw earlier at camp, or what I had heard about from you earlier at camp in terms of the way that he was communicating well with his teammates, and he seemed confident. You saw the play where he jumped a route that he should have picked off Josh Allen, but he didn't haul it in. So little glimpses like that make me more optimistic, but a lot of these throws that Allen is making to beat this team at the defense at camp, they're wow throws. They're throws where the majority of the quarterbacks in this league aren't going to make those throws, for better or worse.
Thank you so much to everybody that's tuning in here on a Monday afternoon. We're getting after it. Camp day 5 observation shows. We didn't have a show yesterday. I was off, but we came back with a double header here today to get you guys all caught up on everything that's going on at training camp. Let's dive into the linebacker position here, Ryan, for a minute, because that's a position that we haven't talked a lot about. I think Dorian Williams has made the most of his opportunities at first team. He was obviously out there with the first team again today. I didn't notice a bunch of splash plays today, but I think, I haven't noticed him, severely out of position for a big gain either. So that's a good thing. Deion Jones, when they signed him, a lot of what I read from people that have covered him and people that kind of look at the analytics was that maybe all of his best football was behind him. But, man, was he an absolute spark plug today? And it wasn't all on the first team. I think the majority of it was second, maybe even third. But tackles for a loss consistently, like in a run-heavy 11-on-11 day, to be showing up in the backfield as much as he was, I thought it was really noteworthy. And then also the other guy that really popped for me, Eddie Ulofoshio, had a play where you saw the speed, you saw him navigate the line of scrimmage as he's got to kind of operate sideline to sideline on an outside run. And he was able to close the gap, get all the way across the formation, and end up making the thud up what would have been the tackle. You really saw the speed and the pursuit of Ulofoshio in that spot. And I think, to Jessica's question here, who's the fifth linebacker right now? If you're sitting there looking at this thing, you have Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano, you have Dorian Williams, Deion Jones. I'd put as that fourth. Beyond that, for me, Ryan, it's Ulofoshio over Morrow, and I think that they might even keep 6, and Morrow could be the guy. Balin Spector's kind of working in all these kinds of different teams. He's kind of fluctuated a little bit. He's looked the same as he has in years past, so somebody's gonna have to unseat him. But that among those three there, Jones, Morrow, and Spector, there's a bit of a competition going.
Yeah, I agree with that. Deion Jones, though, has popped a little bit. He has looked like a good veteran addition to this locker room, and the last 2 years, he has not been an every down type of starter. He's a few years removed from that. But the Bills don't need Deion Jones to be an every down type of player. They just probably want to be able to bring him in and rotate maybe a few times per game if need be, or feel comfortable having to play him in a pinch if there's an injury that's going to keep one of the guys out for a game. And then all of a sudden it's more of a depth role where he's coming in to give one of the guys a breather because like you said, Dorian Williams is third in line in that linebacker room, obviously. But Jones has done a nice job this summer. I'm with you. And, when they signed him, you're right, the whole former Pro Bowl linebacker, but he was many years removed from being that Pro Bowl type of player. He's made some nice plays. Nicholas Morrow's another veteran, another guy in the mix, but, if he's not making splash plays, it opens the door for some of these other guys to step up, a Balin Spector, who you and I have talked about. Talent's there. Health has not been in his favor. And then the rookie, Eddie Ulofoshio. I really think that he is someone that can be fifth or sixth linebacker on this team, a major contributor on special teams as a rookie, but then someone maybe you can mix into the defense from time to time.
Speaking about mixing it in, we mixed in a bunch of insider texts today. I think I counted up 13 or 14 more to come the rest of the afternoon. So if you haven't pulled the trigger yet, I'm giving the quick shout out here. Text 716-528-6727. Become a Shout Buffalo Bills insider. We'll have you covered every day of training camp, every game day, every game week, every offseason week, 24/7, 365 availability of Ryan Talbot and Matt Parrino to you to answer all of your Bills questions. You could also go to joinsubtext.com/Shout Buffalo Bills. Put your phone number in there, and you can it'll take you through the process on your computer. The Shout text line is brought to you by Carrie C. Byer, attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Litra, located at 237 Main Street in Buffalo, New York. If you or someone you know is seriously injured, give him a call, 716-852-1234, or check out litrolaw.com. Where do you want to go next, Ryan? Ty Johnson?
What's that?
Ty Johnson, maybe real quick?
Let's talk Ty Johnson real quick, and then we can go into a few other players I have that we can talk about. So let's start with Ty.
Yeah, so Ty Johnson, early in 11 on 11, he took I think it might have been a pitch, got to the outside. And, man, I would have loved to have caught up with Benford after the practice. I didn't get it, or not Benford, Bernard, just to ask him, was that a play where you were just holding it in all of these days of camp without pads on, and you just wanted to go out there and hit somebody? Because he blew Ty Johnson up, and I don't know if he bent backwards and maybe a hamstring issue. We'll hopefully get an update from Sean McDermott on Friday. It will be the next time we talk to him. But Bernard just came in and got the party started with pads on, and it was a really impressive play. Obviously, Ty Johnson goes down, doesn't return to practice the rest of the day. Now you got another guy, and Ty Johnson we've talked about, Ryan. Like, availability has been a big problem. Going back to his days with the Jets, last year kind of got a little bit of a run going, and he kind of falls off when, he's injured. And obviously it was a workout injury. It wasn't on the field, but this is something with the Jets. Last season, it was just kind of a nagging leg injury. This is something that's becoming a trend with him. So we're going to have to watch this closely. Big opportunity to not only Ray Davis, Ryan, but Darrington Evans, who had a big run. I'll talk about that in a moment.
Yeah, and that's not the first big run for Evans either. I mean, he ripped off one a few days ago at practice that would have gone for 75 yards, I believe, for a touchdown. So he's showing off his speed, which is an asset to him. He's one of those players that you didn't consider for a roster spot at the start of camp, but if he can win the kick returner job, for instance, then you can have him as depth, a little bit of a change up in terms of the running back room as well. He was drafted in those mid rounds, third round pick, if I remember correctly, early in his career to kind of be that speed type of back, and it just hasn't worked out for him. But Ty Johnson, again, minus a major injury, is going to make this roster. In my opinion, the way he played last season. But this does open the door big time for Ray Davis. And on Sunday, both of those two backs both made a play. Ty Johnson had the run of the day, but he dropped a touchdown pass in the end zone. Ray Davis catches a touchdown pass, but he fumbles. Cameron Klein strips the ball from him. It's recovered by Daquan Hardy, and that's the second time he's kind of fumbled at camp. So there's highs and lows. But if Ty Johnson misses any significant amount of time or even a few practices at all, that really does open the door for Ray Davis to show I can be counted on as running back number 2. He has to protect the football. He has to keep making the plays that we've seen thus far. But that's a big opportunity for the rookie who's done a lot of nice things at camp. But like you said, it's also an opportunity for some of these other backs on the roster to kind of make their case for a roster spot or at least being a priority practice squad type of player.
I really like Evans for the return job potentially. The thing with Hamler is like his injury history makes me really worrisome about putting him in that spot, because I know that they think that this is going to limit the kinds of big impacts that lead to injuries. But he's also, if you're putting the ball in his hands, that many times per game, in addition to if he makes the roster, you're probably going to give him a couple snaps in the offense just because of his speed. I wonder if that's a little bit too much on his plate. He's trying to work his way back, and he's been available, and we'll see if that continues as pads stay on in the preseason and all that. But that's definitely something to watch. Red, White, and Blue Bills over on YouTube says Frank Gore above Evans. I'm not there, Ryan. Like I think Frank Gore Jr. has had some nice moments over the last couple of days, but I think Evans has outplayed him dramatically. I think that he's closer to Ray Davis and Ty Johnson than Frank Gore is to him, if that makes sense.
No,
in my eyes.
The gap between them. Yeah, I get that. Frank Gore Jr. has done some nice things. Probably done a little bit better than even you and I anticipated, but he has not. It's not been a consistent type of thing. It's not been something where you sit there and say, "Oh my gosh, where did this guy come from? He's going to be the secret superstar." He's done some nice things. I think he's going to be able to be a practice squad type of player and maybe grow it over the course of the year and maybe push for a roster spot in year 2 potentially. But Darrington Evans has done a lot more at camp in these first 5 practices. He has more of a track record in this league, albeit, it's been limited in terms of opportunities and playing time. He bounced around a few places last year, for instance. But yeah, I'm right there with you in terms of this running back depth.
A couple of comments in here about the center quarterback exchanges, and they continue to be an issue, Ryan. Like this is something that, you want to see a full practice at this point, 5 days in. And I know the pads just went on, so maybe tomorrow is the day that you look for that, where there's not a mistake on the exchange between Connor McGovern and Josh Allen. And we had another one today, and it led to a fumble. Like sometimes it's just a bad one and you got to like blow the play dead. This was a legitimate fumble that in a game type situation, you're talking about taking care of the football. This is one area that these two have to really get worked out. And it's becoming, I think we talked about it a couple of days ago. It's becoming a growing concern as these kind of mount up.
It's becoming a bigger concern to me, Matt, because on Sunday there were two specific snaps that stuck out in my mind where Allen's pretty much bending all the way down to his cleats to pick up these snaps, and they weren't fumbles, but at the same time that throws off the timing, the rhythm of a play where Allen has to go low to catch or to get the ball. If you're going against an elite pass rusher, that gives that player some extra time to get past the O lineman that they're going against. It's not an ideal situation. So you do want to see this get cleaned up. It is a fairly new relationship, and you hope that it's going to get better with the pads on. Obviously, multiple practices this week. We'll have the scrimmage on Friday, more camp the week after. And then we start getting into those preseason games. And, we've talked about how much you're going to play Josh Allen. You might have to play him a little bit more just to work on that center quarterback exchange and an actual game setting. He doesn't have to throw the ball. You can just snap it to him multiple times and let him give it to the backs and let them do whatever, because you don't want to see anything happen to your star quarterback. But the center exchange with the quarterback is a huge thing. And again, the Bills have been very spoiled in that regard the last few years with Mitch Morse here, and you never really saw those issues. These guys need as many reps as possible. And I want to continue with the O-line and a few O-linemen, Matt, because I see a question about Van Pran Granger. I want to talk about someone you mentioned in your observations today. Real quick, Darrington Evans run. What did you want to tell us on that?
Oh, it was just explosive. I mean, it was blistering through the line of scrimmage, getting past to the point where two defenders are trying to converge on him up the middle and they can't get there quick enough and he just blows through. Like he's got that game-breaking speed, and I envision that working really well in the new kickoff format. He had a really good game. I'll get to Solomon in a few minutes. I see that question. Remind me about Solomon when we get to the one-on-ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, O-lineman, Cedric Van Pran Granger in the comments again. Someone said they don't feel like he's not getting a fair shake. I think he is getting a fair shake. He just hasn't moved up the depth chart yet necessarily. He's a rookie. He's young. Give it some time there. But the one I want to talk about, Matt, is La'el Collins. You made a note about him again today in the insider chat in terms of some of your observations. What are you noticing from La'el Collins?
He's just like, it's almost like he's got stilts on his legs, right? Like he's got the big knee brace. He's got like what looks like a calf contraption on the other side. He's put together by scrap parts at this point in his career. Like there's no other way to say it. Like you could see the body is just broken down for him, and it's actually kind of sad. I mean, this is a guy in his prime that was a really good player at his position that now is just really struggling in the most basic of exchanges with other players. And it was, who did I say it was in the text that really he struggled with?
Oh, let me look real quick. I was just looking at it too.
Cameron Klein, who's had a really nice training camp, and he's a nice young, like flat, juicy player. Like he brings a lot of juice. But around the edge, it's like Collins had no prayer, and it didn't lead to a sack. I think the quarterback got rid of it in time, but you could just see consistently out on the edge, he's really struggling. And, somebody asked, who does this potentially open the door for at tackle? It opens the door for Tylen Grable. We'll talk about him in a minute. And then it also opens the door for a guy like Richard Garage, who I think quietly is having a really solid camp. He reminds me of like the offensive line version of Tyrell Shavers with maybe not as much glitz and glam, a guy that put his head down. He worked all last season on the practice squad and now is positioned to maybe take a run at that second tackle spot behind Vandemark, or who knows, maybe even push Vandemark. I mean, that's, we won't know until the games, and things change dramatically. Right now, it feels like Vandemark is that top depth tackle, but things change a lot in this league.
Yeah, when they first signed La'el Collins, one of the reasons I was a fan of it was the versatility, the ability to play tackle and guard, and it's starting to look more and more like he might be a guard-only option for this team, which, again, like you said, at one point this was a great player in this league, over 100 starts, a guy that could be counted upon, and it might just not be there anymore. The injuries might have really taken their toll on him, where he can't come close to the caliber of player that he once was. And Richard Garage, you don't want to make too much of one snap, but you see how much the O-linemen love this guy. Aaron Cromer loves this guy. One-on-one rep, he wins on Friday. And, Rich, the whole, O-line is gathering around him. They're all like fired up for this guy. This is someone that UDFA last year popped in the preseason. One of the 3 games, he was the highest graded O-lineman, one of the highest graded players on the roster. And it showed the way that he was creating lanes and staying true in the pass protection. Now, he wasn't ready for a regular role at that point last year, but we've talked about those year 1 to year 2 leaps for players in this system with Aaron Cromer. He looks like someone potentially could be ready for that year 2 leap. And as for Tylen Grable, I'll be the first to admit he's not nearly as raw as I thought he was going to be. I know he had multiple years experience playing tackle in college, but that's all he has, playing tackle. High school quarterback, actually some impressive stats as a quarterback, was a tight end his first year in college, and then they switched him over to tackle. He was good, but so few years playing at a position I really thought he was going to look out of place a little bit as a rookie. There's been a lot more good than bad, but today was the first time, Matt, you noticed, a bad play.
Welcome to the pads in the NFL training camp, Tylen Grable today. And, he's been solid. Like, I've actually been impressed with him to this point, so much so that I think he's really in a roster battle right now at the tackle spot. I know he does have a little bit of flex, but I don't think I've seen him at guard at all for the Bills. So it looks like they're focusing in on tackle. I mean, he's huge. I mean, I think he makes sense for him to be on the outside. One-on-ones, Tylen Grable versus Javon Solomon. edge goes to Solomon. And what, Ryan, what does everybody know about Solomon in terms of what he's expected to bring at the NFL level as a pass rusher?
It's supposed to be speed.
It's supposed to be speed. Oh, it wasn't speed in this win. It was power. And what happened was, I think speed can turn to power, right? Like if you're fast with your get off and up to get into the lineman's body, you put them at a disadvantage of putting them off balance, and then be able to use any kind of power that you can generate to get them off of their spot. And that's exactly what Javon Solomon did. He had him kind of crossing his legs, trying to get his back foot set. And as he did that, he hit him with a nice punch to the chest and the shoulder pads. And Gable went flying backwards down to the ground. And Solomon won an impressive rep there in one-on-one. And you wonder if that's the kind of thing that can springboard Solomon into getting some more action. He's been mostly on the third team. Maybe that's something that, he can bounce up a little bit and maybe get some second team reps and start to work against some of these better offensive linemen. But I am a little bit concerned about Solomon and bigger picture wise that he hasn't popped more on the third team.
Yeah, it's something where you'd think that with that speed, with that bend, and now some occasional flashes of power, he'd be able to win some of those matchups, and it hasn't been consistent enough. A player I was definitely high on once they drafted him, I thought could come in and potentially make some noise this preseason training camp and kind of stand out as that one of those last guys on the edge roster, but hasn't happened yet. Still time for him. More camp time, preseason games. He's going to get a lot of run in the preseason. So, the opportunities are there. It just hasn't been consistent enough. And again, Red, White, and Bills, you're talking about third team players with Van Pran, Granger, second team, the second team unit. No one's really fallen off there to have him replace him at center or along the line. It's just something where he's been fine, but he hasn't necessarily done enough maybe for the Bills to say, let's move him up. Yeah, that's not to say it won't happen, but the coaching staff makes decisions for a reason. They want to probably get him comfortable, see him win on a consistent basis against third teamers before they even try to move him up against these guys on the second team, or even, ever think about giving him some more significant reps. So hope that answers your question here in the chat. A lot of these depth guys, they have moments, but it has to be more consistent before you see them really rise up those depth charts.
If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well. Shout out to our good buddy, Mark Bouchard, one of our insiders, said the dorm room looks a little bit small. It's not big, Mark. It's not very big. I mean, we are back to school in a big way, and that's okay. This Sunday, we are now 6 days away from the return of Shout Live to Buffalo Bills training camp when we head over to Dorado on Park Ave. Wingnuts is coming out. Made the big three for Josh Allen. I don't know if you listened to the Eric Wood podcast, but he ranked Barbell, Mulberry, which is in cahoots with Sunny Red. So I'd put them together. Great shout out. Their wings are great. And Wingnuts made the mix, or made the list for Josh Allen.
Yeah, I loved seeing that on Eric Wood's podcast today. You just used a great term, Matt, back to school. For Gable Steveson, this is like pre-K or kindergarten. This is football is new to him. He does not have those years of practice that some of these other players do. However, some good some good play from Stevenson today on your behalf. What would you want to tell about that?
Yeah, it's crazy because you really start to visualize what the preseason could look like, and like the path to Gable Steveson finding some of that Christian Wade energy this preseason. And it is in like those splash play moments where he doesn't have to have too much on his plate from a scheme responsibility standpoint. He can just win with his athleticism and try to make a play. And he blasted through the line. I don't remember who was trying to block him, but he blew up a running play with a tackle for a loss. And you're like, wow, like that's a huge confidence building play for him. Speaking of which, guys that are trying to build those moments, Travis Clayton during one-on-ones completely shut down David. I'm going to butcher this name. It's the first time I've said it. Ugawagaboo? I think that's pretty close, Ryan.
I like Ugawagaboo. I hope that is how you pronounce it, so we can say that a lot here in the next few weeks. I knew exactly where you were going with that, though, when you said it.
Agwagbu.
A log.
Agwagbu. Agwagbu. I think we'll go with that. But yeah, John mentions it over on Facebook. Steveson spent some time with Aaron Donald recently. That had to have been invaluable. Maybe that's something where I'll try to, pick his brain about what that was like for a story in the next couple of days.
Yeah, that'd be great because, again, similar size, obviously Donald with much more history playing football. But that's something where he can talk about Donald. That is what helped him win at the pro level, what helped him grow as a player, being an undersized D lineman. Donald still came into this league as someone that was expected to be a game wrecker of sorts, and he went levels above that. But for Gable Steveson, these moments are nice. He had a one-on-one rep today as well against Alec Anderson that he won. So those little wins go a long way in terms of this guy that is new to football and learning the process, learning about the game. No one that I think has a chance of making the main roster, but the Bills see splashes like that. It keeps them encouraged on the practice squad to want to develop this game further, give him a full year of playing football to see what he can do, because you can find diamonds in the rough with limited experience, like a Travis Clayton too, potentially. I don't mind the Bills rolling the dice on players who have athleticism that's off the charts in certain areas, and an Olympic gold medal wrestler and a rugby player from the UK that moves away Travis Clayton can. I'd rather give guys like that a chance than these, some journeymen that have been in the league for a while, but really you know what you're going to get. There's upside there. There's opportunity there to develop and grow these players. So a guy like Steveson, I think, is well worth a practice squad spot this year.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be somebody that they've invested in. I think they gave him a 3-year deal, right? I'd actually be interested in what that looks like in terms of like releasing him, getting him on the practice squad. I'll have to ask maybe Brandon Bean about that next time we get a chance to talk to him, what that contract looks like, because I don't know. Like I can't see a world where he makes the 53, but like if they're not super impressed with Deshaun Williams and they can carve out a roster spot and they have him on that 3-year deal, is it something where they put him on the 53? Like, could you see that be something that, maybe not with a role, but maybe as like a, he's not going to be active on game days. It's going to be something where he's going to get a practice with the team, probably majority of scout team reps. But, I wonder what that looks like. I'm sure it's a minimum deal. I actually look up and see if Spot Trek has his contract.
Yeah, I can't imagine that scenario playing out like that. And maybe it's just because of the bad luck that they've had at D tackle over the last few years, where you've had to bring up guys, you've had to elevate guys. You'd probably want that last spot to be a guy like Williams, who has experience playing in this league, that you feel like you could be counted on for valuable reps. And Eli Anku, who's been in the system for multiple years and made the most of those opportunities that have called upon him. Go ahead. Did you find it? Or
yeah, I did, but no, you're good. No, I was just yawning. That
Okay.
wasn't because of you. That's just because I'm on 4
No
hours.
worries. But with Steveson, it's just it's too raw to give this guy a roster spot at this time, unless there is some huge gains in his game over the next few weeks that I just can't foresee happening.
So he's 24 years old, 3-year contract, 0 dead money. So they gave him a 3-year contract with 0 money fully guaranteed. So you can cut him, you can bring him back, you can put him on the practice squad. Like you can do all those things. His cap number this year, $795,000, the absolute bare minimum, $960 next year, and then 1.1 in 2026. So if he shows like great acumen, this is actually like a really nice contract if he becomes like a player that can become a part of your rotation, right? So I think you sign him to the 3-year contract, because if he comes in here and just blows your doors off, well, you bet on him early, you gave him that opportunity, and now you have him under contract, and you can kind of see where it goes, but at the same time, you can go in a different direction and go the practice squad route and the 1-year deals and see how he progresses.
Yeah, absolutely. I see in the chat here, how is the punting and kicking game looking? Hasn't been much to report, Matt. I don't know if there's anything.
I mean, today they did a little bit. Sam Martin kicked a few kicks. I wonder if we'll see from Browning tomorrow. We've seen Sam Martin punt, right? I don't think that's newsworthy how he did in a training camp practice. It's going to come down to the holding. It's going to come down to the punting from Browning. When that happens, we'll definitely discuss it.
Yeah, it's just been pretty quiet so far. And then other than the day of Tyler Bass going 6 for 6, there's not much to report there. So when there is more to report there, we will definitely cover it. Man, anything else you want to talk about?
Are you gonna see the Deadpool Wolverine movie?
I do. I have to. I haven't seen it yet. I want to see it, and I will hope to see it soon.
Somebody told me it was phenomenal. And what's funny is
Hilarious, I was told. Like,
I've not seen Wolverine, like the one where Hugh Jackman made a couple years ago. I was
mhm.
watching the X-Men for a while, but I think I fell off. And then when he went solo, I'm like, this is weird. And it just didn't fall into the priority pool. And then I've never seen a Deadpool. So what do I do here? Like, what's the protocol for a movie like this that you want to see that you're completely not up on the back stuff? Like, do you got to go see it or all the stuff before, or do you just go watch this one?
I don't think you have to see the first two Deadpools to appreciate this movie. I've been told hilarious. Deadpool though is a much different type of superhero movie. They've been rated. I think both of them were rated R. The first two. So it's one of those things where it's a little bit different, but they're great movies. They're very funny. I've heard nothing but good things about this one, so definitely on my bucket list to see at some point here this summer.
All right, I think that'll do it for today's show. Oh, one last thing. So, play of the day, Curtis Samuel in one-on-one. Absolutely cooked. And the Bills put out the clip of this.
Yeah.
Absolutely cooked. Where was it? Got to go to the handy dandy notebook. Jamarcus Ingram and put a double move on him. I don't know if they show the whole route in the clip, but go look on there. David goes, haven't seen Deadpool, unsubscribed. Sorry about that, dude. I'll get on it. I'll do the Deadpool series. Okay. I'll get on it. I got some time here at camp. I'll throw it on in the dorm room. We'll see how it goes. Kansas Party Boy says, I'm sorry I missed you guys today. That's okay. Go over on YouTube and you can watch the whole thing back again. Or when we're done on X, I think you can replay it there as well. But it was just such a great route. Jamarcus Ingram looked like he was on skates, got absolutely kind of embarrassed on the route. And Samuel made like a diving or a jumping backwards catch. Head went and slammed down on the grass at the end of it. Probably good that he had the Guardian cap on, actually. Just a sensational grab. Another note that you can react to, in individual, this was the first time where I thought, wow, Keon Coleman's separation ability was like evident in these one-on-ones. Pads were on, physicality was ratcheted way up. Jamarcus Ingram punched him at the line and he fell down. Then he ran the wrong route. Josh Allen threw the ball like what was supposed to be kind of like a dig, and he went like kind of on a post. So not a great start to practice for Keon Coleman today, but I'm now invested tomorrow in how does he go back, watch the tape on that, and respond tomorrow.
Yeah, it's something to watch because, when guys are going to get physical with him in this game in the regular season, but how he learns from a moment like that at camp will be interesting to watch. Curtis Samuel continues to make great plays when called upon. Khalil Shakir as well. Those top two guys are living up to expectations at camp. Keon Coleman, like you said, rough moment in one-on-ones, but has been made, these splash plays every practice thus far, it feels like, in the passing game. And now you have some other guys elevating as well. Matt Collins, Tyrell Shavers potentially. You did want to mention one thing, I believe, on Justin Shorter today. I thought there was a rep or something.
Ooh, yes, and it goes back to your it goes back to you guys bringing up, or you bringing up at the beginning, Kyer Elam in the camp that he's had. Shorter had a nice reception. I can't remember now if it was in individual or team drills. I think it might have been in individual. Oh yeah, it was an individual. Kyer Elam versus Justin Shorter. Shorter does a nice move, gets a little bit of separation, catches a short pass. Kyer Elam comes in and just like big brothers him. And if they're standing next to each other, that is not the guy that you think is going to big brother Justin Shorter, who looks like, absolutely jacked, rips the ball out. It ends up being an interception or like a takeaway. I don't know. But not a great sign for Justin Shorter.
No, and he needs to have a strong camp to even push for one of those roster spots, wide receiver roles, and hasn't done enough to date.
No, but I will say he was out there as a gunner, as was Mac Hollins. So that's
Yeah.
something to watch. Like, how does he perform in that role in training camp? Like, if you don't have somebody that, like, okay, we like Tyrell Shavers, but not to the point where we see him being a significant part of the offense. That's another part of it. If you're not going to be able to pass MVS on the depth chart or Mac Hollins on the depth chart or Keon Coleman on the depth chart, how valuable are you as 53 as opposed to being a priority practice squad guy? That's a
Right.
question that we'll kind of answer throughout the summer. Did the offense continue to mix in the motion and pre-snap movements? I missed that from Dable days. Can't get in the scheme, Chris. I'm sorry, buddy. But I wanted to shout you out because you are a YouTube subscriber, and we super appreciate that. The best way to kind of like look for that kind of stuff from training camp is, and you'll get a look at some of it in preseason, although they're not going to want to show too much of their hand offensively. The clips that the Bills share on social media, on YouTube and stuff like that, try to watch that, and you can kind of see some of the, maybe window dressing if they have a little bit of a wider camera shot.
Yeah, that's perfect advice. And, you do see some videos on social media. That's the best.
I give a lot of good advice, Talbot.
Go about it.
Time to time.
Absolutely, you do. So back at it tomorrow, correct? Another one close to the public tomorrow?
Yeah, so we'll bring you tomorrow. You're going to want to tune into. You're gonna have to do a little bit more reading between the lines because we won't be able to, say too many specific things. I don't want to get in trouble. But for Ryan Talbot, I'm Matt Parrino. This Sunday, we have it as 2 p.m., but it's actually going to probably be more like 3 p.m. where we kick off the event at Dorado. Wingnuts is coming out. Practice is later in the morning, so we're going to go all the way. Sheila said, better call 911. Matt just broke his arm, patting himself on the back. All right, shots fired, Sheila. Nice job. Nice work. I like when people stick up for Ryan, though. Like,
Pop says tomorrow is open to public. Maybe we have the wrong Tuesday or something down. I thought there was a Tuesday coming up, or maybe it's Wednesday. I don't know.
I can see that being the case. Hang on, let me see here.
Sure.
I can bring it right up. Tomorrow is open to the public.
Okay. Is there one this week that's closed to the public, or is it next week maybe?
Might be next week.
Okay.
We'll have to look into that, but I think tomorrow is open to the public. Either way, that's it. I got to go. I'm exhausted. I'm going to write up some observations. You can check that out on the website. For Ryan Talbot, I'm Matt Parrino. Become an insider, 716-528-6727. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everybody.